Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from dry, deserty Dubai. Today is March 26, 2022, and I figured I'd do an AMA. I always love you guys and spending time with you. And even though I'm out here in the desert, having fun, enjoying life for the Binance event, meetings with various people, and who knows, hopefully we'll be able to tweet some pictures here and there. But it'd be a lot of fun to just kind of keep in touch and give you some updates on some things. And of course, let you get to your questions. So first, let's talk about Cardano. It's the thing you all love. So things are going well. This month was a heavy development month. UTXO HD was a big one. It's well more than underway. We made some major progress with Hydra this month. We've made some major progress with pipelining. It looks like SIP 31, 32, and 33 are working their way to the testnet and are on schedule. SIP 40 collateralized inputs are also making their way to testnet. They're under construction, as well as Plutus versioning and a litany of other enhancements. So the Vossel hard fork is going to be a pretty significant one. On one hand, you're going to have a big throughput increase. On the other hand, you are going to have new ways of developing Cardano contracts that don't require high throughput. So it's always nice to see that, and it's long overdue. We were planning on breaking it two different updates, February and June. Instead, we did a non-hard fork in February, and we rolled everything into the June hard fork. It's just the way a lot of these components came together. So it's an overloaded release. I like doing releases a little smaller, but the good news is that code looks good, testing is on schedule, and we're making pretty good progress with it. Now, we released a blog post last week that outlined in detailed pipelining in more detail. In fact, I'll go ahead and post it here for you guys. But basically, long and short is that pipelining was covered in let's see your blog. And it's called Increasing the Transaction Throughput of Cardano. And it discussed different approaches. For example, like, there we go. I'll put that up on the screen. And it showed a spectrum of options based upon the transaction payload. As many of you know, and some of you don't know, there's a difference in the accounting models of Cardano and Ethereum. Ethereum chose to take what Bitcoin had done, extend it, and then add more capabilities to it to enable smart contracts. Ethereum chose a completely different accounting model, which I think was based on lessons learned from NXT, which came out around 2013. The advantage of the accounts model is it replicates a more traditional virtual machine model like the JVM or other things. And it's a little simpler to understand from a developer's viewpoint. The advantage of the extended UTXO model and UTXO model is it doesn't have a notion of global state from the smart contract perspective. It's deterministic and local alongside a litany of other things. And so ultimately, if your goal is to put on things like improved versions of Lightning, if your goal is to do side chains and lots of off-chain activity, but you want to guarantee isomorphism, then it's much better to parallelize with UTXO than it is to parallelize with accounts. The challenge is you have to decide what is the minimum viable amount of expressiveness. So you'll see in this article, it says, hang on a second, not all transactions are created equally. So you'll see numbers like 150 TPS, assuming a canonical normal Cardano transaction. Then it gets lower if you're talking about Plutus scripts, and the devil's in the details there. So I'd highly encourage you to read the blog post, and I think that it'll add a lot of clarity. But this is coming in June with the Vossel hard fork, in addition to a lot of enhancements to Plutus. Reference inputs, reference scripts, reference data, collateralized inputs, Plutus versioning, and potentially some cryptographic primitives like SEC256K1. SEC256K1 is the Bitcoin elliptic curve, which would help with interoperability. Now, reference scripts mean that you don't have to spend something to see something or interact with it. So that means in some cases, you don't even have a transaction occur. The other thing is that having inputs and outputs means that depending on how you use the outputs, you may be able to have a single transaction that emulates dozens or hundreds of transactions that would occur in Ethereum account model. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. And we're very happy and proud of the work that's done. And we think ultimately extended UTXO is the model that will dominate the future. Satoshi got it right with UTXO, but it's dangerous to increase the expressiveness beyond a certain point, which is why it wasn't pursued long term. Every attempt to do so with Bitcoin led to some serious issues. For example, you can reference the Bitcoin inflation bug of 2010 as a reference point. A few other things. Dapp ecosystem, MinSwap was a great example of the community coming together. Long and short is when they open sourced their code, wing riders found something, and then wing riders reported it to MinSwap. They worked together. The auditor that reviewed the code tweak also wrote a blog post explaining how they missed something, and it just discussed how difficult it is in practice to build smart contracts for any system, and why auditing, certification, automated tooling, and best practices are so important. So that seems to be resolved, as far as I can tell. The teams are slowly but surely chipping away. The thing that was not reported was how the Cardano community worked together. Other communities are very adversarial. Our community seems to be friendly, welcoming, and collaborative, which is a hallmark of success. There's over 500 dApps under construction at the moment, millions of assets that have been issued on Cardano. Our TVL is growing at an extraordinary rate. Wallet creation is growing at an extraordinary rate. Participation in Catalyst is growing at an extraordinary rate. These are just facts. Whether they're reported or not, whether they're reflected in the crypto media or not, or they want to focus on other things, is completely beside the point. Cardano continues to thrive and continues to be relevant in every dimension, from our engineering to our science to community growth and engagement. A lot of great progress with the foundation as well. They came here to Dubai for the first wave of conferences. I came for the second wave, as well as some private meetings. And in both cases, we were able to, I think, fairly adequately represent the mission, vision, and philosophy of what we're trying to do. A lot more to say on that relationship and the governance of open source development, but that's for a later time. And hopefully the 360 episode this month and next month will be quite elucidating. Final announcement, I'm going to Consensus June 9th to 12th. It's going to be in Austin, Texas. And not only will I be there, the Cardano Foundation will be there, and likely dozens of Cardano ventures building on Cardano will be there. Everything from the VC ecosystem like the C Fund and others to efforts in Africa to our DeFi actors and so forth. I know some people on Twitter and in the crypto space like to pretend that there's no ventures on Cardano, that it's ghost chain, nothing exists, it's all made up. So I think they'll be quite surprised when they actually show up and see there's real people there who don't work for me and are completely independent of IO and the rest of the gang. Turns out there's hundreds of these companies, and it turns out there's a lot of very passionate people. So in addition to Consensus, our hope is also host a community event similar to the one that we hosted in Miami in 2021. And you're all welcome to come to that event. It will be free of charge. The community event that we host, Consensus won't encompass tickets. So unfortunately, I can't extend that to the main conference. But if you happen to be in Texas between June 9th to 12th, we'll make an announcement of an event. Love to see you there. It'd be a lot of fun. Okay, so let's get to your questions. Why is this video so grainy? It is usually clear. I am on hotel Wi-Fi in the middle of Dubai. And unfortunately, this is as good as it gets where I'm at. Is it possible that a Prism could replace bureaucracies like a DMV model, for example? The answer is yes. Prism is really good for credential management. So do you have a certification? Like, are you a doctor, a lawyer, or accountant? Do you have a license? Do you have a credential like a driver's license or fishing license or hunting license? And if so, who issued it? What are the terms and conditions for its validity? So being able to issue all of that and do that in a very organized, coherent way is one of the specialties of blockchain technology in general. And it's one of the reasons we built Prism. In fact, we're looking into creating an African Credential Alliance, and it's going to focus on trying to bring these services to some of the poorest people throughout Africa and give them a better experience than the one that we have in America. Wing Riders deserves an attaboy shout out. It's a wonderful team. We have a great relationship with them, and I think they're one of the more professional of the DEXs, and we've certainly had quite a bit of fun talking to them. They have some great technology that they're going to be deploying. So I like Wing Riders. It's pretty cool. And it's just an example of the rapid iteration and growth from Sunday to Min to Wing. Everybody's learning very quickly. And they're moving very quickly, and that's a good thing for Cardano, much faster than anything we ever saw with Ethereum. You meet CZ? I'll likely see him today because I think I'm going to the Binance event here in a bit, but he's floating around, and many other people are as well, like Gabe Abed and so forth. So we'll have some fun together. Have you looked into Toda? Will it do away with the need for proof of stake or work? No. Toda is an example of a new class of protocols. We haven't done a protocol analysis on it yet, so we don't know exactly where the trade-off profile sits. But the point of the way we constructed Cardano, and we're going to make some dedicated videos and materials on this, is that we wanted to have a stable, strong root of trust that you then could use to spin out dedicated computation layers that have different consensus, transaction, and accounting models. So we call that Cardano settlement layer and Cardano controller computation layer. This is in the original Why Cardano white paper that I wrote back in 2016. So when you look at things like Toda or metastable consensus, like what Avalanche has brought, Algorand, litany of these other projects, it's entirely possible to spin them up as sidechains of Cardano. And we encourage people to do so. And there's a lot of benefits to the network as a whole, in addition to potentially high throughput that these systems can offer. These systems could also offer new ways of writing smart contracts and different development experiences. But it doesn't make sense to replace Ouroboros. That's a long arc research stream. And we continue the march to Omega, and there's a lot of amazing things we've come up with over the last 6 years. Hello, Charles. Will Mithril allow for Dapps to work on mobile devices without using anything Web 2 related, just like front-end communication, the blockchain? Yes and no. It improves the state of affairs and opens up a broader line of research of inclusive accountability despite missing key features like a copy of the blockchain, for example. So right now, it's really focused towards balances. So you receive a token and you need to check if it's not been double spent. And you also need to check if the token exists. So that's a very powerful starting point, but it's very possible to expand this to broader predicates. For example, the output of a smart contract or these types of things. So we're looking into that, but that's a long arc research agenda. And there's a lot of people exploring these things like the Mina protocol and all the recursive snark people and so forth. Starkware is another company. This is another example of a misconception that people keep coming at. Charles, when Hydra is released in June, It's not being released in June. We have a public roadmap. It's on GitHub, every communication you can read. Yes, versions are coming out. Yes, there's a Hydra head on the test net. Hydra is a product that will be every 3 to 6 weeks, experiments done, iterations done, integrations done. Dapps will be integrating it. They say then, oh, well, when this MacGuffin comes out, will that immediately solve the scaling problems, increase TPS, or will more work be done? Well, Chris, I've repeatedly said, this year our big focus is pipelining and input endorsers. The Hydra program continues, and resources are scaling up for the Hydra program. And long term, that's a phenomenal solution for off-chain stuff. It's a phenomenal solution for micropayments. It's a phenomenal solution for interoperability between chains. There's a lot of things there. And actually, Hydra as a technology group can also be integrated into off-chain infrastructure for dApps. But it's not the end-all be-all of scalability and throughput, especially this year. The base ledger itself can be dramatically enhanced by orders of magnitude just by implementing things like pipelining and input endorsers. You don't need Hydra for that. Furthermore, you have sidechains like Milkamada and Mamba and these other things that are coming that will offload a lot of volume into different systems. So it's important to manage expectations. Hydra, because of the way we built extended UTXO and because of the way we're designing it, long-term is going to carry enormous amounts of volume and be an essential component for all dApps that have high throughput requirements for Cardano. But it's not this MacGuffin that come June, we're going to flip a switch and then magically it's a million TPS and everybody's there. You're being dishonest if you tell people that, and we've never once said that in every single communication. You have to focus on iterative, tangible growth, pipelining and input endorsers, for example. And in the very beginning of this video, I posted a blog post that shows you the actual numbers there that we believe we're going to get. Would you recommend Dubai as a vacation destination? No, it's very hot, very expensive, and very fake. But a lot of money's here. Trillions of dollars. Hey, Charles, what happened to your JavaScript course? Oh, this is a fun one. You know, for those of you who don't know, I really do want to do a free online course that's kind of an introduction to programming and computer science and teach it through the lens of JavaScript and cover a lot of concepts like functional programming and data structures and algorithms, and then do some really fun applied work, some data science work, some AI work like making a deep fake, some things like creating a web scraper and so forth. And I think it'd be a lot of fun to do that. And you can go through a gradual iteration. So you start with stock JavaScript, and then you teach them TypeScript to teach type theory. And then you go on to actually functional versions of TypeScript. So like Ramda and these other things. And then you can learn about functional programming techniques beyond just maps and filters. You can even go into monad-like concepts and so forth, and might even be able to cover functional reactive programming. Now, in all things in life, my ambitions are usually larger than my available time. And so I just haven't had the time to even think about it, but it is something I want to do. And I just have to make some hard decisions about what can I do every quarter. I've been focused a lot more on my biotech startup right now with my dad and brother, and we're making phenomenal progress there. Might even be able to have that organization have a clinic and practicing medicine with the physicians there before the end of the year. So we'll see on that, but it's very time intensive. Ranch is also taking a lot more time than I thought. It's very large, and it was quite worn down when I bought it. So I've been slowly but surely upgrading it and having to learn how bridges work and roads and pavement and all these things. But it will come. Why are you working on ETC? What does ETC have that Cardano does not? I am no longer contributing in any way, shape, or form to ETC. Left the community last year, I believe, or late in 2020. I spent years of my life trying very hard to make meaningful contributions there. but there's nothing to innovate. There's nothing to do. There's no desire for a real roadmap. There's no funding available or commitment to funding, no treasury system. And you can spend millions of dollars and years of hard work and build a full node, and it still means nothing. So it was just, it was a necessary thing to prove a point about the nature of social contracts and fiduciary commitments, but not really interesting otherwise. We took the code base we built for ETC, though, and we turned it into the Mamba project. And with a lot of improvements and some changes, we're now going to launch that on Cardano for EVM interoperability. So it actually produced a lot of value for Cardano because it gives us EVM support. So if you're a Solidity developer or Web3 developer, you can use what we wrote for Ethereum Classic on Cardano, just better, faster, and cheaper. But there's nothing I'm doing there anymore in that ecosystem. Which consensus mechanisms besides proof of stake do you see as promising? I think that the multi-resource consensus paper that we wrote called Minotaur, let me bring that up for you guys, is a really cool paper, and I highly, highly, highly recommend reading it. Minotaur basically shows you how to create a weighting mechanism for more than one consensus algorithm at the same time. And the power of that is that you can then combine proof of work and proof of stake and other proofs of things together. And so you get a more egalitarian system. Instead of just one model of control, you have multiple models of control and multiple security bases. So I think this is the future, but it's going to require a lot more research. And we'll make some statements about what we're planning on doing with it at a later date. Charles, is Cardano ISO 222 compliant? I've seen this come up a lot. Sharia compliance and 222 compliance. I have a small group of people looking into the certification standards for 222. And I think this is something that we can integrate with a work package from the Cardano Foundation. So we're certainly going to have that discussion. But it would be nice to get that done. I think Algorand is, and a few others are as well. When Legends of Valor, for those of you who don't know, I own a video game called Legends of Valor. I played it as a kid, and I bought the IP for it. We are setting up a game company called IO Games. We'll make an announcement at a later date for that. But the first product will be Crypto Bison. And then after Crypto Bison, we'll get into more involved things. But I think that's good. Charles, a bit off topic, but will the Epic time frame ever change from 5 days? Yeah. As Ouroboros evolves as a protocol, it may be possible to actually remove the entire notion of an epic. In fact, there's a great paper written by Pramod Viswanath and his authors called Nakamoto Proof of Stake, which has a discussion on how to do that. So the amount of blocks per epic, the entire notion of an epic, is something that's going to change over time as protocols get more involved and advanced, especially when you move to multi-resource consensus. Charles, I want to learn Haskell. Got any recommendations? I'd recommend the Haskell book. It's long, but it's definitely a good book. When proper recording studio? Is it almost built? No, we haven't started working on it yet. The lot that we want to put it in, there's still a tenant in there, and we're negotiating to see if we can get rid of the tenant so I can put my studio in, and it'll take about 6 to 9 months to build the studio. Hey, Charles, when Jed, I suspect that Jed will drop somewhere in the second half of 2022. I was kind of hoping to see it in the first half, but it looks like there's a lot of things with Fossil hard fork, which will make Jed significantly easier to deploy. So it's probably prudent to deploy that post Fossil. Is it possible Cardano will collaborate with Algorand? We've had a lot of discussions with the Algorand team about everything from VRFs to how they got Sharia compliance. They're a very friendly team. There's good people over there like Sean and, of course, Silvio. And we're on great terms with them. So where and when it makes sense, we do have a discussion with them. We're certainly looking for low-hanging fruit in collaboration. I suspect it'll be around a lot of shared common infrastructure that we need, like verified crypto and primitive implementation and so forth. But you never know, there might be commercial ventures that make sense to do together. We do like that team. They're good people. It just, you have to find something that, there's mutual interest in, and sometimes there is and sometimes there's not. Seriously, why is everyone working on smart contract chains ignoring Bitcoin? Countries use Bitcoins as legal tender, but smart contracts are needed for e-commerce. Well, Dylan, this is exactly why we created extended UTXO. Bitcoin is hostile to smart contracts by design. The expressiveness of Bitcoin script and the current Bitcoin UTXO model makes it exceedingly difficult to do anything other than what Bitcoin was designed to do. Every single innovation of Bitcoin has come hard fought as a result of years of careful thinking and extremely conservative changes like covenants and taproot and SegWit and all of these things. It's very, 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 very difficult to do any innovation. It's no coincidence that the Ethereum founders worked on things like Mastercoin. That was Jeff Wiltshire. That was his first project there. Vitalik, I believe, worked on color coins. I was doing BitShares. People were trying to either do things on Bitcoin or do alternative systems because Bitcoin itself was actively hostile to smart contract development. Maxis will tell you otherwise. And I say, okay, well, then show me how to build a DEX. Show me how to build an Oracle. Show me how to build a stable coin and actually deploy it and run it on the layer one Bitcoin. They can't. From the finality time to the transaction fees to the amount of data that you can use in op return to the expressiveness of the scripting language to the inflexibility of the restricted accounting model, which is why we created Plutus, and it's why we created extended UTXO, and it's why we embraced proof of stake. You need to do these things in order to actually have a system that has any chance of being able to support smart contracts. Now, to be fair, people have tried. Papers like BitML was written. Simplicity was a language by Russell O'Connor at Blockstream, and they have these things called jets or whatever they are. So there's stuff there, and it's real, but it's hard fought and seldom done on the main chain. It's why it's taken so long for Lightning. It's why it's taken so long for side chains. It's why things like NEPA PALs are not natively integrated into Bitcoin. They should be. You get tons of stuff for free, including great light clients. So no, people aren't going to do it unless they do it with wrapped Bitcoin on Ethereum or wrapped Bitcoin on a different system, because you just can't do it. And if the Bitcoin system wants to change, they certainly can. But it's been over 13 years now and no meaningful update in that particular direction. They're just not going to do it, which is why Cardano exists and Ethereum exists and Polkadot exists and all these other platforms, different boats for different floats. Hi, Charles. Love your work. What's your favorite Pink Floyd album? Wish you were here. What about peer review of open source code of Dapps? Shouldn't there be such a mechanism? Well, that's the responsibility of the Dapp developer. What the ecosystem can do is develop automated tooling, both static and dynamic analysis. So everything from linters to model checking tools to testing kits that do things like property-based testing, to standards and certification techniques. We're having a summit, I believe it's May 17th to 18th in Barcelona, specifically for Dapps certification for Cardano Dapps. And we're inviting a lot of the big people to come, and we're trying to create a nice comprehensive strategy long-term for how to test and verify that Dapps are written correctly. Now, your particular code as a Dapp developer is your responsibility. And that's why bug bounties exist. And that's why people pay for audits. And that's why people open source their projects to attempt to find issues, just like MinSwap did. The system works. Hi, Charles. Any updates from the Wyoming Cardano Research Lab? We have a small lab at University of Wyoming, and we're in discussions to create a standards body there. And we've been going back and forth on a variety of things, but we'll make an announcement later date on that. But it's moving along. It's just moving at the speed of bureaucracy. Hi, Charles. Any updates on the book Mastering Cardano? I have a meeting next week when I get back from Dubai, specifically on Mastering Cardano. The particular person who was working on it got ill, and we've had to find a different team. And so we have a table of contents, topic areas, and a real good idea of what we want to do. It's actually a little fortuitous in a dark way because we've decided to change some of the things. And if we had published 1.0, it would have already been out of date. So now that we're converging to a more stable design, I think we'll get a better product. But that also means it's unlikely Mastering Cardano is going to get out this year. It's likely going to be next year, unfortunately. Do you have any physical injuries? If so, what are they and how do they make you feel? That's a good one. I suffer from gout, which is why occasionally you'll see me walking with a limp. It's usually on my right foot, but it's gone into my ankle and my left foot a few times. And I take allopurinol for that. I have a few sports related injuries. When I was a kid, I did taekwondo and judo and gotten in a few accidents here and there in various vehicles, and they've caused some trauma here and there. Um, you know, probably a lot of PTSD from being in the crypto space, dealing with constant criticism. I mean, it's not easy. Where every single day, psychologically, you're bombarded 24 hours a day by people you've never met, and half of your entire industry hates you and says horrible things, many of which aren't true, or as things that are taken out of context are not fair. Uh, Not a saint. I've certainly done a lot of things wrong, but unfortunately, there's just no empathy. And frankly, human decency or respect in this industry. And many times it's deeply hurtful and disgusting. And people just say, well, suck it up and don't let it bother you. Well, it's easy for you to say that because you don't deal with it every single day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You don't get white powder mailed to your home. You don't get death threats. You don't get people throw toilet paper rolls at you, these types of things. So on the physical side, outside of being overweight and having some issues here and there, fine. On the psychological side, takes time. Have to go to meditation retreats, have to talk to people, have to work out, meditate every day, do a lot of things to cleanse yourself and keep the passion going. No amount of money in the world is worth this type of abuse. It's only worth it if you have a mission and a vision. And we're making great progress with the things I want to do and the way I want to move the world towards. And things that have happened in Africa, Ukraine, other places are just a demonstration of why our technology needs to exist. So that is the ultimate replenishing, cleansing sense, is that if you're mission oriented, it gives you an excuse to go into the arena and take the abuse and deal with the day-to-day stuff. There are hard days. We call it the monster of the week. Something happens, whether it be Mint Swamp or a book or whatever the hell it is, and you just see people do things that sometimes you just wonder, how can people be so disgustingly stupid or be born with such lack of empathy? But then there's good days. You meet a lot of wonderful people. You go to great places and you meet people who give you hope. You meet people that they don't have a lot, but they still give you the shirt off their back, and they actually believe in the mission. And they too want to live in a better world. And that, by far, when you look at the balance of the scales, far outweighs any of the negative stuff. So, it's people focus too much on physical, but the mental, I think, is far more important as an entrepreneur. You have to keep going, which is why so many entrepreneurs have substance abuse problems. They have alcoholism. They develop mental illness. They have bad marriages. It's tough. I don't drink. I drink 1 year on, 1 year off. And I do this to make sure I don't become an alcoholic, because it's pretty easy to become one in this industry, especially with all the bullshit people deal with. And there's a litany of other things to do. Charles, do you have daily strategy to increase lifespan, supplement stacks, intermittent fasting, sleep routine, exercise? I could write it all down on paper, but it's a world of difference between knowing it and doing it. So I'll have one for you guys. That's why we created the biotech company. And in a few years, I'll have strong opinions on it, but I'm just learning and I have a beginner's mind about it. So I don't have strong opinions at the moment. Charles, I feel like all of crypto is becoming a scam. How do you feel about that? It feels that way at times, especially when you go to some of these conferences and Doge this, SHIB this, NFT that, and you keep asking, what's the point? Who are you trying to help? What are you trying to build? And they can't give you an answer. So there's certainly some of that. On the other hand, there's a lot of great progress. Like come October, we're going to go back to Bermuda and show you what we're doing in Africa. And I think you guys can see that. Charles, what watch are you wearing? This is a Swiss watch I have on. Try to guess the model. Our Cardano Ergo, the only extended UTXO model projects. There's the extended UTXO Alliance, and I think there's 3 or 4 that run extended UTXO or some variant of it. Charles, did you ever watch Charles in Charge? Charles in charge of our lives. Yeah, I saw it. People used to sing the damn song to me. And then everybody forgot about it. Then Netflix came and it came back. Charles. Hey, Charles, boxers, briefs, or commando? Boxer briefs. Surprise AMA on my birthday in Taiwan. Thank you, Charles. Take care of yourself. Well, happy birthday to you, Klein. Thanks for dialing in. Hi, Charles. I'm Korean. Do you have any memories of Korea? Yes. I've been to Korea many times. and I really love Seoul. And unfortunately, I haven't had a chance to explore the countryside. I really wanted to see the nature of South Korea, but I haven't had the opportunity. Just hung out in the giant concrete jungle. Do you read fiction? At times when I have the time. I just finished The Three Body Problem. That was a fun book. Little behind the curve on these things. Charles, huge fan. Can you update us on the woolly mammoth? Actually, I think the mammoth guys might actually come to consensus. Ben and his team are doing some great work, and we're going to have a few meetings next month actually with them. But overall, they're on schedule, it looks like, and they're having a lot of success. It's just a long arc thing. It'll take years to get that done. But once it's done, it's going to change the world. Charles, how are the mushrooms? Quite well. The gourmet mushroom farm should be fully operational by the end of this year. Excuse me, by the end of June. Why does it require 360 pages of esoteric symbolism to, quote, prove 1 plus 1 equals 2? Is something fishy about it. So that depends on your perspective. If you're attempting to unify logic, set theory, and arithmetic together, and you're trying to do it in a way that is constructive and productive, meaning that once you've done it, you can then use that model to prove more meaningful things, then it requires a bit of spooling, startup to do that. And with the construction of any formal language or collection of axioms, you have a lot of things you have to think about at the same time, a balancing act. So the more axioms you have, the more powerful the system can be in proving things. However, the harder it is to prove that the axioms are truly independent of each other, meaning that you actually can't derive one from the other. Look at the Euclid parallel postulate, for example. Second, the issue of contradictions. So, do the axioms violate each other? You say something is true, and then this other axiom says it's false. And that's a huge problem in a formal system. And then there's a notion of completeness and decidability. So is your system complete, meaning that all the things that you'd like to prove within that system, you have some means to do so. And decidable, meaning that even if you could prove it, do you have some mechanism to actually reach the result? It turns out that math is neither complete nor decidable in its current formulation. So the thing you're referencing is the Principles of Mathematics from Bertrand Russell and Alfred North Whitehead, and they spent 2 volumes and hundreds of pages to unify collections of math together in the late 19th century with the intention of creating an independent, completely non-contradictory, decidable, and complete system. And unfortunately, the agenda failed in the long term, but it led to the birth of computer science. So you always get something for the research, even if you don't know what you're looking for. There's a lovely book called The Annotated Turing um, that I'd recommend reading from Charles Petzold that kind of covers it in a nice layman's way. It actually goes into Turing's paper. Lectures on the Philosophy of Mathematics also covers this in a certain respect from Joel David Hampkins. Good book, too. Hi, Charles. When is the Ada burn happening, please? It's not. Charles, are you still taking Lion's Mane? Yep. Warhammer 40K on Cardano. It'd be a lot of fun to have Warhammer 40K on Cardano. It's probably not going to happen anytime soon. Although I guess they're making a game on the Horus Heresy. That'd be pretty cool. As a JavaScript developer, should I learn Solidity and then use Mamba or just learn Haskell? I'd go down the Solidity route. It's going to save you a lot of pain and heartache and then gradually learn Haskell over time. What's next for Cardano? Basho. Any tips for learning how to learn? There's a great class on Coursera. So if you go to Coursera and you type in learning to learn, there's actually a class that has a bunch of study techniques. It's a good entry point. There's a book called Moonwalking with Einstein that talks about the nature of memory and how one can improve it. And then there's a great book on Zettelkasten called How to Take Smart Notes. So, if you have a good note keeping system, you use network knowledge graphs like mind maps, these types of things, and you develop things like Memory Palace. They'll help a lot. And you also need a time management system for studying. Pomodoro method helps a lot. Highly recommend looking at that. Charles, any update on the security lecture video? Yeah, I got to make the next one of that. Let's file it with the JavaScript course. I got a lot of great feedback, and unfortunately, I just haven't gotten around to it. I'm busy, guys. It's been very, very long the last quarter. Really horrible quarter, too. Hard times. Hi, Charles. Can I hug you? I need a hug. Are you happy with the current status of Cardano, and is it going as expected? It's like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until you get punched in the face. But I'm actually quite happy with the progress we're making. It's quite good. Heads of state? Yep. Thoughts on layer 0? We have the best one, the Cardano network stack. Look into it. It's pretty cool. We thought about it for 5 years. Come on, give me a good question. Hi, Charles. Is there a point when you think you'll feel you've done enough in crypto space and walk away, or do you envision it being in it until you're dead or can't function anymore? Well, the way I built my life, I'm getting into a point where I'm kind of in a meta company. So I'm setting up a biotech company and I invest in a lot of different things. I'm a very successful VC. And we have IO, and IO is turning into this wonderful, kind of incubator for tons of interesting ideas. So as Cardano transitions to an open source project and more members of that community instead of stewards, it gives us the ability to continue contributing, but then work on dozens of things at the same time. So from that perspective, you never get bored because you have many opportunities and you're able to fail fast and succeed and make lots of money. But on the other hand, you also can focus a lot more on impact and socially beneficial things. So I'm never going to run out of stuff to do. The crypto space, it is one of the most magical and one of the most frustrating. It's magical from the perspective that we have the capacity to change the world. And people say that, oh, well, we're going to change the world, rah. But we actually can, if you think about it. Look no further than the Ukrainian crisis. You have 2 million refugees in Poland. The vast majority of them are having a hell of a time accessing anything that requires a government record in Ukraine. Um, so when you look at that stuff, sorry, I had a pop up. So when you look at that stuff, you realize we need to get this done. We absolutely need to get to a point where Cardano has a capability to take the 3 billion people who lack economic identity and give it to them so that they can basically enjoy the same lifestyle I have and other people have. So there's a morality behind the things we do. Cynical journalists somehow want to equate this to being alt-right or libertarian utopia or crypto anarchy. And I'm just like, okay, I just want to help people. And it makes me truly, truly sad that a group of people have become so cynical and hardened and lack any notion of empathy or human responsibility to helping people. But then they write articles in Time and they write books and they do other things, talk about how evil and bad crypto is or focus on all the negative things. And meanwhile, you see the people and you see them suffer and you realize that if you don't do something, no one will. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? We have the tools, we have the capabilities. So no matter if you want to quit or not, you have to show up every day because there's nothing in life I could do at the moment that's more meaningful than showing up every day for crypto. Now, there's a lot of stuff in this industry that is just sickening and disgusting, like all the scams and the Ponzi's and the irrational expectations and the moon boyism, the cliques that are formed, the token funds that are formed, the predatory behavior, the information asymmetries, the insider trading, the market manipulations, the games exchanges play. And being in the industry for 8 years now, I've seen literally everything. Everything. I knew John McAfee. I saw people list BitConnect. I saw it all. And you say, okay, well, there's certainly going to be some justice. There's certainly going to be some rebalancing of the scales, but certain ventures now have $10 billion when they raised 4 and they got to keep all of it and say they don't even have any obligations or duties to people they raised it from. So unfortunately, there isn't any of that. and people just get away with doing all kinds of things in the short term, but they don't get away in the long term, because even if legally they're okay, they still have to live with themselves and their conduct and their acts. And I'd like to believe that there is some notion of karma for how these things work. Unfortunately, it has hurt a lot of people, older people, younger people, irrational people. There's a mania about crypto that's deeply unhealthy. People go and make 100x, 1,000x, 10,000x, and they think they're the smartest people in the world, and they don't realize they've gotten lucky. They put it all on red and won, went to the roulette table, and they won. That doesn't make you smart. And if you keep doing it, you're going to end up losing everything. So that really does disgust me. And the longer I've been in it, the more of it I've seen, and you get a little jaded and cynical. And if you didn't have that constant renewing of the mission, I don't think I'd be in the space anymore. I think I'd just go do something else. For as many events as I go to, and as many of these AMAs I've done and these other things, I'm actually quite reclusive these days. I enjoy privacy. I enjoy being off the grid, a certain degree of asceticism, which is why I bought my ranch. And I tell you, there's many times when I go up there, I say, boy, this is nice. I don't want to go anywhere. Every given month, I get invitations to go to probably more than a dozen countries, meet this billionaire, meet this head of state, do this thing. And it is a struggle to kind of balance all of that with the reality that I shouldn't be traveling as much anymore. It's not necessary for Cardano, and it's counterproductive to a healthy, balanced lifestyle. So never quite leave crypto, just change the way that I personally interface with it, and have plenty of actors floating around that are more than capable of carrying the torch for certain things I used to do. But, there's a clear roadmap this year, and there's a clear roadmap next year. And we're just chipping away at it. We're just going to keep chipping away at it. Cardano is my life's work, and there's no reality that I'd ever walk away from it unless I felt that Cardano is in a position where it's self-sustaining and it's self-determining, and it's sustainable from a perspective of that as it gains millions of users, it still does the things that were promised on the label. It can upgrade itself. It has predictable cost. Technology is where it needs to be. We're getting ever closer to that reality, but it still does require constant vigilance from dozens of companies, not just my own. And what's amazing is that the vigilance is provided now by over 3 million people. So it's exciting from that perspective. There's magic there, and we're accelerating, not slowing down. Pipelining, input endorsers, Mithril, Hydra, these are all things that are near horizon, and they're just the beginning. Omega, multi-resource consensus, building a vibrant sidechain ecosystem, tons of standards, interoperability like ISO 222, dozens of things like that. They can be done in a 3 to 5 year time horizon. It's pretty amazing. And the governance itself, new voting systems, these things, this is probably the most exciting time of the project's history, because we actually get to do interesting and real things. And we get to see those interesting and real things impact the lives of tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people. You don't get that option or opportunity as a person, usually. You may get occasionally, from time to time, a chance to do one or two things that are very meaningful at that scale. But to do a collection of dozens or hundreds at a scale of hundreds of millions, it's a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So regardless of the price of admission, you deal with that later, but you take it and you never look back, just like a Shackleton ad to go to Antarctica. It's something you have to do. But all things have their place and time. And actually, that alarm means I got to get going. So, good question to end it. Thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun, and I'll send some tweets and reports after I get back from Dubai to Colorado. Cheers.